Welcome to the Culture Podcast, where we uncover the hidden mechanics of high control groups, their tactics, and their impact. And we speak with the survivors who broke free. My name is Derek, and I'm your host.
My name is Trinity, and I'm also your host. On this podcast, we explore cult life as real people who have lived through the life-changing process of leaving a high control group.
What we're going to do over these next two episodes is have one-on-one interviews of each other. The first episode will be me interviewing Trinity just to get his story and his background. Before we dive in, we want to know this isn't about judgment. This isn't about pushing any agenda. It's not about any really understanding. It's just really about a conversation with real humans, real people, just discussing their journeys, their thoughts, their reflections. And we're really just honored to be here. I'm honored to have you here, Trent. And the goal here is really just to have just normal, open conversations and really just get through these stories and have these conversations. So I'm really excited to get this podcast off the ground and started.
Same.
For people that don't know, Trent and I both were raised as Jehovah's Witnesses. And as we go through these interviews, the goal is to have at least one a month. We know a lot of people have, a lot going on in their lives. And so that may increase over time to do more than one a month. But just to have us here in your podcast feed and look forward to a new interesting conversation with people that have come out of high control groups or cults. Some of the podcasts that I have lined up are friends and some family and people that I have known to be in the Jehovah's Witness faith. And so that'll kind of be where we start. But my hope, and both Trent and I's hope over time, is to have more and more people on the podcast coming out of different high control groups and cults and really just get an even more in-depth conversation and more people on the pod that maybe we don't as closely relate to. But yeah, I really hope it's going to be a good conversation every time.
I agree. I echo fully.
With that said, we're definitely going to dive into it. Do you have any more things before I kind of get into the questions about your journey? Because that what brought you here?
No, I think I just want to say I think that we both are just really aligned on humanitarian effort, just like really simply put. And I think I tend to be like a real clinical, like tech-minded person and train of thought, which can be irritating, honestly, but I live with it. And we have like learned to work with each other over time to like refine ideas. And, we've had to under duress. So I think that that's like the core of what we're talking about, like our own human condition being exhibited and also helping others exhibit theirs in a meaningful way. So just purely because it's important to record, but then also because there's so many positive reasons to share successful models of how to deal with social problems that are so unique.
Yeah, I think it's twofold. I think it's helpful for us to share as people that have come through this. I also think it's interesting because very few people, unless they've been through something similar like us, will truly understand kind of what it means to be through what we've been through.
Yeah.
And so I think the more and more that we have these conversations, I think it can help bring light to like our mental faculty, our history, and just kind of,
There's a lot of context information that really helps others understand our condition.
yeah, where we're coming from and why we kind of see the world the way we see it. And also, I think also how we're open to seeing the world differently over time. Yeah. So it's quite a journey.
Yeah, over time.
Hmm.
Because we can just see real simple logical conclusions that like we kind of been trained to do forever.
Yeah.
And then also, I should say, we're people. Trinity Herrera, Derek Duvall, we're people. We just have our personal ideas that we're sharing in that capacity. That's like legal language that's important, but our efforts are just infallible and human, and we know it. And we just want to do work that benefits humanity to the degree we can. I think genuinely that's a statement that we've both felt for a long time and provably so through the way our lives transformed. So those are, I think, just core ideas and statements.
Yeah. And I think the other half of it too is for anyone who is a guest on our podcast, having their own opportunity to share their story. They may not have had a platform to just kind of do this. So I think it could be
Many don't. We didn't.
Yeah. So I think it'll be good to get their stories out as well. I know that there's a bunch of cult podcasts out there. This is not unique, but hopefully, me and you, as really good friends over 20 years, we can provide kind of a unique perspective. I would imagine there'll be some topics that are going to be tough,
Yeah, and hard and painful, which we understand.
but I also hope that we also can find the opportunities for humor in these conversations. I think that's also important as well.
And a grounding in reality, which we'll try to attain always.
So yeah, so this will be a great experience for everyone that comes along with us on this journey. So please continue with both Trinity and I and whoever we bring on as guests. And with that, we'll get it started. First things first, a brief introduction. Who are you now, Trinity Herrera, and who were you then?
It's such a hard question, but we're going to try to say things simply, right? So, I mean, I'm a person who's evolved through really intense spiritual trauma forced upon me unwillingly by a man-made design, and it sucks, but however, I'm a person who's made peace with that now
Yeah.
and who's successfully turned that into just being a good human at its simplest value, which has been hard for to define. So, like as simple as I see the world, I want to find truth, whatever that is, and
Yeah.
see what I can build truth on because I had to do that when I started over. And that's a core part of this process for people is like the starting over, the rebuilding of new ways that can sustain us emotionally and spiritually, etc.
Yeah, they say one of the hardest things to do for someone is an identity change.
Yeah.
And
It's loss of ego. It's ego death, dude, as you know.
normally, I think normally when people talk about identity change, they might be simply thinking of something like, I want to become fit. I want to lose pounds.
That's personality change or habit change.
Yeah. And even that's hard. Uh, and I think when you really think about an identity shift where your core foundations of your beliefs of how this world exists is under a structure of belief in a God, and you have an understanding of everything. You think that, okay, this is what happens when we die.
Based on facts that you perceive to be self-evident at the time.
Sure, based on the indoctrination of your childhood, as in both our cases,
Yes.
because not everyone joins a group like this at the beginning of their childhood. They maybe join later in life, and so it's a very challenging thing. But with that, so I already know this a little bit, but you came into contact with the group because you were basically born in, correct?
Essentially. So probably around the age of a year or a year and a half, my dad was stationed in Germany, and I was actually born there when the Berlin Wall came down in August. I think I was born in August of 1989, and then the wall came down in October. I was like over there at the time to military parents, and my dad has a Hispanic last name, obviously, and the Spanish speaking missionaries came to my mom in earnest and spoke to her in Spanish in Germany, trying to talk up to her about the witness stuff. And they successfully converted her via charisma only, basically, and intensity.
That's usually how people follow other people. Great charisma.
Yeah, it's like it's social pattern, social replication. It's like stuff we talk about easily now, but back then it's like foreign concepts.
So break that down for me a little bit. So your mom, from what you obviously have been told, because you were your mom came into contact with the group
Right, right.
and like Eve persuaded
Oh my
your
god.
dad
A
pers-
heretofore unconsidered implication.
uh, coerced your father into joining this religion.
It was mutual, and that I think is part of the neurotices that I formed. That my mother and father both like had signs of certain traits, like uncanny ability to read. It's like a super simple fucking structure, but like it comes naturally to me in a way that doesn't others. It's like super easy. My mom and dad had it. Certain family members have that kind of, inclination. So it's just like pretty simple stuff. They're like attracted to systems of coolness and weirdness and novelty.
So she talked with your dad. Your dad was he on board right away?
Well, they had shared religious history. I think my mother was like Lutheran or Protestant, maybe, but like pretty hardcore. And also, like, strong mentally. Like there's certain religions that have really structured framework that's logical, and that's how they get humans to come along.
So you were in Germany,
Yep.
and how long
And my father too, he was Catholic.
were you in Germany before you skedaddled, before you got out of there?
Like a year. Like a year. When we moved to Flagstaff, Arizona, you and I meet through osmosis organically via the Christian congregation there and continued to intermingle for decades.
So I think I remember you telling me this in the past. You obviously being really young, you don't have any memories of celebrating holidays,
I faintly do, actually.
just like a Christmas.
I do. So like I do have memories of being in Arizona as well as in Germany even before we left celebrating. I have pictures and mental memories, of
Mm,
my first birthday and Christmas. And so it was like a really speedy and quick conversion, and I think it's just because my parents were like intellectually stimulated.
yeah.
Simply.
So they got back to the States, moved to Arizona, and then they were married.
I think they got married overseas or on maybe in America in Kentucky.
And then they're like, we're locking in. This is our life. We're gonna be witnesses.
Yeah, they were like forming a family. They want security. They're trying to figure out the unified religion they're going to raise their kid in, like any human would.
So, as a little kid in Flagstaff, what were those early days like for you, growing up as a witness? I would say in terms of like schooling and kind of how your like routines are. What could you remember back then?
We'll talk about so much of this, shared framework and memories, but like
Sure.
book study core to my growing up. This book study arrangement of study,
Yeah,
like study.
for sure. Can you describe the book study arrangement from people that may not
I
be?
mean, I perceived it at the time where I first learned of it as like a really beautiful, wholesome, amazing human arrangement of like
Mm,
close interconnectedness, human sharing of ideas, social proof, intellectual documentation and proof.
yeah.
That's how I saw it because of how I thought. And it was beautiful. And like the most intellectual conversations I've had were in those rooms.
So yeah, so for me, book study, so the way the Jehovah's Witness kind of structure was like for us growing up is 3 meetings a week, usually Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Sundays. Tuesdays, and this is a little bit different for different kingdom halls or different churches or whatever. But yeah, it's usually that. And Tuesdays were usually book study. And book study would actually be held, unlike at the kingdom hall or what most people would call a church, it would be held in someone's home. And so you would dress up in your finest. You'd wear a little tie, you'd wear a little suit,
Even in someone's home, I would do this.
even in someone's home. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, you would be
Out of respect and dignity for the occasion psychologically.
fully decked out. The ladies are wearing their dresses, and it was as if that home for that time period was God's place of worship.
Communal place, God's place of ideology, knowledge transfer, and programming, literally. Now,
But for I don't know for how you felt, but for me, book study was great.
oh, I fucking loved it. It was my favorite thing. My favorite thing in the world, really.
They would they would have treats at the end. It was a shorter meeting. It was a little more casual, and you would just study, some random book and just kind of go through the question and answer format.
It wasn't random. It was well intended. It was so
Oh, sure, sure. Yeah, I'm sure we'll go over that more over time, but
yeah, just like hey, we're gonna fucking focus intently for months in the next year and a half, and to this schedule on this specific part of the Bible. It was amazing.
I think the thing that's interesting too is there's always going to be a shared mindset of how what's the word? There's a shared mindset of how damaging
Yeah.
it was to grow up in this environment and how some things were genuinely great being a part of a community.
That's the and. That's the power of the and that I have come to now accept of something can be both beautiful and cherished deeply while also wounding you entirely and deeply.
Yeah, because we both probably have great memories of book study.
Oh yeah, I some of my best memories.
And then it was also horrible when they took it away from us.
Oh yeah, I was also like, what the fuck? Ideologically, how could
Yeah, when did that happen? They took away book study, gosh, like in the early 2000s, maybe?
And what really sucks is that we've always been free to do that. And yet I perceived that a lot of people were fucking not. Like I would do that shit for fun. And I was trying to reach out to people like, do you want to just for funsies do our own book study arrangement? And that shit's hard to keep together.
Yeah, because part of the structure too is like intense schedules. So it's like personal studies on Monday, book studies on Tuesday, family studies on Wednesday.
Rigorous.
Theocratic ministry school, or what is the life in ministry?
So when I say the word programming, I mean it in the specific intention that they meant it.
Yeah,
Like, literally speaking.
sure.
They literally
Oh yeah.
tediously and fastidiously over time planned our
Oh,
programming
for sure.
well in advance.
So along that lines, like when you were kind of growing up, so you're a young child, you're starting to grow up into the teens. What kind of rules do you remember that you had to follow? Maybe even some that pop out where you're like, it sucks that I can't do this, but other like schoolmates or maybe other people can. Do you remember certain little expectations or things that happened when you were?
Yeah. Existentially, concretely, in my memory because they affected me so deeply constantly, dude.
Yeah.
Yeah. The fractures of like rational bias and emotional bias and all these other simple measures of social interaction constantly just bothered my conscience as a Christian person. You know?
I know I succinctly remember having memories when I was younger where as young children, I don't know, third grade, fourth grade, and there would be like they'd all gather all of us into the auditorium and sing music. And there would be times where the music, maybe it was around a holiday, and it would be like, oh, I can't sing those songs. So I would imagine probably one of my parents basically told the teacher, you need to take him out of these type of events if holiday songs are happening because he can't sing those because it's against his religion.
My parents routinely and ordinarily lived to that level of like they lived at that. They lived that, embodied that. Yeah, they routinely took me out of school.
Yeah, so I was constantly like when other kids were singing and being a part of the group and being joyous, I would constantly be just off to the side
Me too.
and isolated.
Isolated in my thoughts, worried, missing my human fucking companions that I couldn't be a part of.
Yeah, and it's like when you're that young, you don't really know why. You're just like, "Oh, well, I can't sing those songs because they're bad."
Yeah.
And it's because it's against my religion, but it's kind of just a parroting that you're just kind of told to say, but you don't really know why it's quote unquote against your religion.
Well, and you're trying. The thing is, some people don't know and they struggle forever. But like, also people like me and you and so many others, like we know, are like working through those issues in real time as kids and are aware and having conversations as teens or kids and agreeing in private to the logical dissonance, like just simply using Socratic method at the simplest level. And
Yeah, I just don't think as a child you know enough yet.
yeah,
I think there is some studies that show like at certain ages you don't actually get to
cognitive level. Yeah.
a logic, yeah, like a cognitive logical level of thinking where you can ask those questions, the whys.
That's the problem, and that's the implication. As humans, we're really not designed to think about these existential matters as children.
And yeah, and part of the indoctrination, which every parent does, both good and bad, is by the time you're at that certain point where you start asking questions, your foundation for reality is set.
Yeah, perceptual reality, because that is how we perceive it. Simply.
Yeah, so it's really challenging that where you go like, well, if I start asking questions, I already have my framework. So it's hard to even think of the thought process of jumping outside the framework for your reality.
Yeah, but also simply not at all for certain people who think like that in business or for other reasons strategically, or just who think like that because they are that way. Like it's actually that what you just described is actually just like how to make pretty reasonable risk assessment calculation. And people do that regularly. And
But what I'm saying is that as a youth, it's hard.
oh yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's completely inappropriate for the youth to be going through that. I think that's like a consent thing. You and I have both gone through extensive measures of consent throughout this whole process,
Yeah.
laboriously so. And like, I never got to consent to that as a kid.
No. And then we would have what's called conventions, and they were kind of big,
Oh, mass congregations, I loved them.
big gatherings of multiple congregations that would get together and fill a sports arena.
Multiple times a year.
And what 10,000 in an arena?
Like, the smaller ones are usually between, like, 1,000 to 5,000 depending on your MSA, and then
Yeah.
your big ones could be huge, 50,000.
And those yeah, and those were the times that they would be
Oh
baptisms.
my god, in mass, yeah.
And in mass, and actually it's really interesting because I would say it would pain me back then to see 14-year-olds get baptized,
Even then, it bothered my conscience, yeah.
but I would be lying if I said that because it would just be that was the norm.
It was the norm, yeah, it was
But now it does when I see someone that doesn't have the age of consent,
yeah,
to get baptized and basically sign a life contract
or mental faculties. Yeah,
into something like this. So it's definitely
yeah.
wild. As you get older, so based on that kind of reasoning, the way the Jehovah's Witness structure works, you basically have to agree to get baptized at a certain age. You're not born into getting baptized and kind of sprinkled the water on you. You have to make a dedication, a decision at a certain age that you're going to get baptized. It's usually framed around I don't know, at least in my case, and I would love to hear your thoughts. A little bit of peer pressure. All my other friends are doing it. My parents want me to do it, so I'll do it.
Well, I think this decision is influenced by, like, actually, like, a bunch of fake realities that all exert pressure, like, really simply. So, like, you have peer pressure. That's a social means.
Hmm.
You have intellectual pressure being programmed specifically to you to reinforce these ideas daily. It's also like algorithmic learning.
Hmm.
We have words for that now that we didn't have, in the 90s or 1000. I think it's clear that they're just trying to help people refine thought processes over time, you know?
Well, I think like when you're a young child, you just want to please your parents and you want to conform,
Yeah.
and everyone else is doing it, so you decide, well, I'm going to do it too. And you just don't really realize, especially the younger you are. I mean, people getting baptized at 12, 13, 14.
Yeah.
And they're so excited. Their parents are so happy for them.
Yeah.
They feel that elation. I reckon stuff to that, to like the same mindset of a child putting a piece of artwork on the fridge.
Yeah.
And they just want their parents to go, "That's so great. That art is so great."
And it has strong meaning for everyone involved and is driven by good faith. And this is the kind of and situation that we're talking about.
Yeah.
Because that to me is just a morally painful situation. Like, you have a child presenting to their parents, wanting them to be proud, including God and multiple realities, right? Socially, all intervening in pressure on a child
Yeah.
that you and I understand, and others, so many, like, other people may not, but people who have left understand that.
So tell me your baptism story. How old were you? Kind of what you can remember about that?
I was 16. It was incredibly poignant for me. I felt religious conviction so strongly in my heart at that time, but also had devised alternate systems of being that were serving me that I found conscionable but different. And there were lots of ways where I was very unclarified and imperfect, many times. So, like,
Do you, do you feel okay? So you got baptized when you're 16. That's probably about 3 or 4 years after I meet you.
yeah, and that's, like, why it's complicated for everybody and easily unique, because as a 16-and-a-half-year-old, I felt pretty confident in my decision-making ability, and I was, like, in a managerial construction role, like, managing and organizing people at that time. I was, like, paying bills for my family.
Yeah.
So, like, I'm different case than most, but still.
So you're kind of, even though you're young, you're kind of like already have a lot of adult responsibilities.
Yeah, it's like a very gray area of, could I make that decision? That's a really tough question, but I made it.
And you made it. Did you feel a sense of pressure? Like, but you already said you had a lot of
Eternally, since my birth, yeah.
conviction though. Like you truly felt like this is the right path when you did it.
Well, at that time, I had surmised that, like, it served me best to continue in the systems that I was in that served me, that I understood, right?
Hmm.
That's such a simple, fucking logical explanation of something that, like, is probably hard to express for a lot of people, but, like, I've had a lot of time to think about it.
So you got baptized at 16. At the time, you felt it was good. And your mindset was like, hey, I'm doing what's right for Jehovah. I have a closer relationship with my God.
Yeah, and like out of a desire to uphold the process they put you through, the self-affirming, self-reasoning process of like, oh, you want to do more? Okay, well, here's some social pressure to run mics and to do this. And well, hey, you want to do more?
Yeah.
Show me. Show me you understand this and that, and that you conform in the way I do and logically.
Yeah, it's a different structure for women, which I'm sure we'll get to in over time
Yeah, entirely.
with
Yeah.
women that we chat on the pod.
It's egregiously sad.
But for men, what we learn the farther we get away from it, it's a very kind of business like structure of advancement.
Yeah, and that's why we understand that and why, some of us have done well in business. It's like it's pretty easy.
You get a little cherry dangled at you when you're young, like, oh, you're going to help kind of clean bathrooms or be a parking lot attendant.
And you see near perfect models of imperfect humans doing really amazing things all the time and affecting outcomes.
And there's a kind of a praise cycle where, hey, thanks thanks for helping with parking, and you just did so great for these events.
Yeah. Oh my God, it felt so good. You used your free will in a good way, which, dude, these are confusing as fuck because we're regurgitating some of these thoughts, which are true. That is the fucked up mess that I am as a person and why I think this all bears talking about
Yeah.
because each of us does this in a different way. And
Yeah, I find it funny too. There's certain memes online where all the young Christian boys are carrying all the chairs.
yeah, the good boy, like,
All the good boys carrying the chairs. I got 5 chairs under each arm to go set up for this wedding or whatever it was.
this is how church boy shows we're good. Yeah.
But it's okay. So you get baptized, you're fully in. Do you feel like when you're baptized and you're fully in, do you still feel like there's hardships, or does it feel easy for you?
I mean, dude, this is such a confusing thing to talk about because it's all things at once. It's like, you feel intelligently worried about life, and so you make personal plans, and then you also pray to God and think he's real and that he's going to solve your problems and step in and guide events, and then you just work within the favor of those.
Hmm.
Like we've done some complex mental math over many decades to like get to those equations
Yeah.
of how to manipulate like our outcome. So I think that that's like just that's I guess my simple thought.
It's complicated. So
Oh yeah.
there's times where
See, I just confused myself.
that's okay. So there's times where like it's easy for you, and then there's other times where it is tough.
Well, like when you're in that position. Now, no longer. I've simplified my thought into just rationality, which is like
Yeah.
cool. But complicated then.
Yeah, but putting yourself back at, 17, 18, you're going through the motions, you're moving up. How far did you move up kind of in the ranks? What did you feel like you were accomplishing? Were you ever a pioneer?
It's hard to define because again, it's a process throughout time, and it's like you're at varied
Yeah.
levels of evolution within their framework and levels of acceptance within many different realities that we're all shared to different degrees, dude. It's fucked up. But like
Yeah.
uh I served as an auxiliary pioneer, I think, like with Ernest side by side in the sweat with you, with other people that we'll name whenever they choose to talk with us publicly. Um
And then just to recap for people that may not know, an auxiliary pioneer is someone who is quote unquote a full-time minister, but kind of a temporary status, and they have to do a little bit less hours. So we go back to that thought process of, kind of the business-like structure.
yeah.
Jehovah's Witnesses were required to
By personal, ethical, moral agreement and God's favor.
they had to actually like record their time in the ministry. They had to log all their hours. They had to log all the doors they went to, all the people they spoke with, all the magazines and things that they placed. Everything was tracked and logged like it was a business log. So you punched in, you punched out.
Yeah, scrupulously.
And an auxiliary pioneer was someone who was kind of a temporary full-time minister. And the times have changed over the years, which ironically now it's like they don't even count time, which is wild. But I think an auxiliary pioneer was like, what, 50 hours a month they had to put in full-time ministry?
I forget.
I think
It's been so convoluted over time and changes because of God's eternal shining light.
yeah. I think it was like 50 hours, maybe 40, maybe 60.
It's like between 50 and 70. At times it was 30 to 50.
Yeah, and a full-time pioneer was like 80 hours or 90. It was wild. And they were basically, the most spiritual.
Oh, yeah. Social ranking system wise, absolutely. If I had to define the hierarchy, and I bet, let's see how I do. I mean, I would say CO, his underling, and then like the body of elders directly together, consciously, united in God's purpose. Notice God's purpose, not that of humans. And then You have outstanding, exemplary people who, via social credit and reinforcement socially, via publicly, like get validation in the system. So, yeah, you've got your pioneers, but not just within your pioneers. Those are also ranked within subsets of people who are exemplary and should be the top tier examples of why to do it this way.
And the highest rank a woman could get would be a full-time pioneer, officially.
Officially, but many exerted their influence positively on their male counterparts.
Behind every good man is a great woman.
Oh, amen, brother.
And then just to kind of shape this structure, so churches are called kingdom halls, more along the lines of a business. So a circuit overseer would have a circuit and basically be like an area manager or a regional manager of a certain area, whether it be like the state of California or, the state of Arizona.
Yeah.
And
It's done with precision and self-replicating human patterns that have already been established.
yeah, and that person would oversee kind of an area where the elders would report to him. He would do his circle. He's kind of a full-time circuit overseer.
He's probably one of the first 501c3 exempt individuals of the chain, I would.
Yeah, they don't really make any money. The cars kind of
And yet their expenses are covered and they live on per diem, etc.
expenses are covered. Their stay is covered wherever they go. Their meals are covered, but they live a very simple means, a simple life. And then they report to a district overseer. And I think some of this has changed as well, but this is obviously when we were in. And then the district overseer would kind of just report to the branch in New York, Bethel. I think that's how it goes.
Yeah, like if I had to start at that level, I'd go Bethel and all the people intrinsically organized hierarchically within that.
Yeah.
And then House of God, yeah, in New York.
And Bethel is House of God, and that's kind of where the printing's done for all the publications. And
One of the largest. So I used to publish books in another life.
yeah,
And I was always outdone by the World Tract and Bible and then Watchtower and Awake and the Organization of Jehovah.
Watchtower Bible and Tract Society of Pennsylvania. Yeah.
And they fucking burned me up because they are one of the best publishing companies in the world. And I literally mimicked their framework in business at the time and successfully.
Yeah.
Because their processes are so well defined and good and trackable, and it helped me in book publishing quite extensively.
Now they're really good in real estate, from what I hear.
Oh yeah, and that's what's so funny. I'm also good at that.
Which is ironically what you're in.
Yeah, I also do that to. And you know what? I'm not even going to state to what capacity I do that in. And cool.
So okay, so you got to auxiliary pioneer. Did you ever get to do prayers, do the mics?
Yeah. Oh yeah. I led prayers, ran mics, and so here's a conceptual problem. This is where incongruity lines in the most Socratic type of reasoning. So like I started to mimic, the patterns of what were my reality as I wanted them reflected back to me. And the problem is when I did that, it did not succeed.
Can you extrapolate that? Can you expand on that?
For social reasons, my social credit was not high enough due to my humanity always.
Mm-hmm.
And like that's a really simple condensed truth that like burns me up.
Okay.
But like you try to so like there's really simple basic logic of like I love my cat.
Mm-hmm.
If I step on my cat's tail, it will react in a negative way. And like system interaction, that's like, ooh, if I press this button, like it hurts my cat. If I do this, it hurts. It's so easy, right? And then like you do that within the witness system, and like because of the social hierarchy, sometimes your ideas can't succeed. They're like artificially held down by the social system.
So the open ideals, kind of the free thought, free speech, is definitely a process that's not really allowed.
Yeah, and so here's what I established pretty early on. They give you framework that you're allowed to build in and maximums that you're allowed to hit on everything, and you can only work within that framework, which I get from a systems building perspective of like I'm building a containable system, right? That's how you want it.
Sure. Yeah.
The problem is though that whenever innovation does come along, those types of systems are naturally resistant to change because they're so in homeostasis, almost like unnaturally so by being just naturally harmonious. And that'll make sense like to some people, right? But like
Yeah.
the problem is whenever you start stepping out and start having valid thoughts and you ask brothers that you trust for perspective on your ideology and like how does
People you probably think is good confidants and friends.
yeah, Yeah, the people you trust most in the world, and you're like, hey, I have really sensitive, core Socratic ideas that I need to ask you. It is perceived as a rejection rather than an inquiry.
Mm-hmm.
And so your social trust is degraded when you question or try to improve.
Yeah.
And so that's a system that can't sustain itself by nature.
You actually learn whether or not you fully put this together mentally, you learn what your parameters are, and you learn intuitively.
Intuitively, most of us aren't even aware of them. You're like, ooh, this is what I could not be approved as a pioneer now. That's a real simple.
You get Yeah, you get a little bit of pushback and you go like, "Oh, okay, well, I can't really talk about that."
Yeah.
And that you just kind of bury that or maybe keep that internal. Um,
And then for safety, you double down on stuff other people are doing. It's logical.
yeah, and then you look over and go, "Oh, well, they freely can talk about this topic, so you may well just dive into that topic since, I have peers that I can to dive in that topic." And it could be about business or, movies or books or whatever.
Well,
Yeah.
yeah, buddy. And let me tell you what naturally happens, dude. The coolest thing happens. You naturally start talking to people and testing the boundaries of independent systems within systems, you know? And so, like, me and Derek maybe have a conversation in the year 2015, and we have a private conversation between us where we realize, hey, maybe some core foundational logical perceptions of reality as I see them are wrong. Maybe I'm deducing the wrong logic. Maybe we arrive at that separately over time, who knows when.
Yeah.
But like eventually you see a system that you can interact with positively and affect your social outcome positively with. And that's like super basic, like science. It's sustaining, it's healthy, it's good. When used with intention and ethics and morals, etc.
So, I guess what you're saying is well, how to frame this. So, was there a moment or maybe multiple moments started to add up where you thought something didn't sit right and you finally started to have this moment of like, okay, I'm no longer I'm baptized and I'm no longer this believer I was when I was 16. Kind of walk me through that.
I mean, for me, it was when my daughter was born because she clung to life. She was barely living when she was born. She was fighting for her humanity at a core level, and I respected it deeply. That's like so easy to see. And
What was it specifically about the daughter?
I just felt, well, it's just that like you learn to think like witnesses, right? And or through the Bible's lens. And so it's like, the Father loved the world so much that he gave his only begotten son to preserve them. That's like, okay, that's my definition of love. Would I give up this child for humanity? That's like an existential question that we are meant to contemplate for long in life, that we have to start thinking about when we're kids.
See, I feel like there's a sense of, you talk about humanity. I also think there's a sense of like just built into us survival for our species.
Yeah, like collective species. Yeah, collective survival.
And so you immediately, as a parent, not being one, I can only conjecture, but you grow a bond with your child and be like, I have to protect this.
A human bond and real. Yeah. And it's simple.
Yeah, I have to do everything.
And so then for me, it was really easy. It was like, so here's another piece is like, I had core foundational intellectual biblical discussion with many of my peers in Arizona about, and even at the Bethel level, about like facial hair.
Hmm.
And I had escalated within the framework I had my concerns about like how human perceptions were unnecessarily being flexed upon us as humans by humans. Like I shouldn't have to have a clean face perfectly all the time, especially if like I'm depressed or anxious or going through something really human. Like we see imagery of Jesus with a beard all the time and all the apostles. It's like a sign of masculinity.
Yeah,
Yeah. And I resisted that.
it's kind of that some of that interesting control methods and coercion where, just to put it for people that may not know, at one time when the organization was first starting, they were allowed to have beards. So early witnesses, aka Bible students, had beards just as
At its founding.
yeah, at its founding of the organization.
To denote serious scholarly importance and intelligence, by the way.
Yep, and also of course, as mentioned, Jesus and a lot of the apostles and disciples and people just of that time had beards.
Yeah.
And then upon this, I think the second regime of control, the presidency of the Watchtower and Bible Tract Society, from what I hear, I don't know if you know another story. Obviously, I wasn't alive then. The second regime basically said no more beards. So it wasn't scriptural. There was nothing in the Bible about not having beards and being clean shaven. They just wanted to kind of exert this control over the new regime of the society,
Right.
and they outlawed and banned beards for all men.
Social control.
So since I think the
Subject to removal from all of your peers by social force and religious conviction.
yeah, so I think from the 20s on, I think 1920s, up until which is wild because up until I don't know, a year or two ago, they're like, yeah, beards are fine.
Yeah.
You can have beards.
Complete change. All right, cool.
It's like none of this is biblical. But
I think it's because honestly, people like me and you, like a couple of years ago in mass, started to realize like this is normal. Collectively, we made a collective human decision freely and said, this is normal. Like, why reject this? And eventually, dude, I wrote letters to Bethel
yeah,
about just like simple facial hair and the fact that I was depressed and lay the fuck off of me, please. Don't persecute me in the Christian congregation for that, dog.
and everyone were taught, everyone, even men who wanted to have their own beards, myself included, are taught to kind of have that conversation like, hey, you're having that beard, it's not looking good.
This is a sacrifice for your relationship with Jehovah, and if you don't abide by it, you abandon your moral standards and convictions.
So you so you had a crisis of conscience, if you will,
Oh, yeah, brother.
a crisis of faith. And what were kind of some of the final breaking points from you where you finally had to say, I can't maybe live a double life? Or I mean, were you living a double life? Was there kind of a time frame where you were, in all intents and purposes, appear to be in,
Yeah.
but in actuality behind closed doors with you and maybe your wife at the
Oh,
time
yeah.
were out?
I mean,
What was that process?
so much of it is personal and private, right? Which I know you respect, and it is individual to each of us, I believe, and private, and
Yeah,
should be.
sure.
But I believe that witnesses are taught to live in triplicate, honestly, or more. I think that we exist in like layers of what we present to the general public and mass as witnesses or people. And we also think about internally in the Christian congregation, our social ranking,
Sure.
and within the hierarchical structure of the organization, and within everything else.
Well, so many people, it's the thought of different masks we wear for different things and
Yeah,
different personalities we have on around different people. But I think it is magnified with the witnesses. It's just how we're taught. So without saying too much, which I totally understand, we don't have to get into that time frame of life. But you definitely, for a certain time, consciously knew, oh, I'm one way around my friends and peers in the congregation.
I would say eternally, honestly, and I find that that was, like, congruous. Yeah, because,
You
like,
were always like that?
so there's a simple truth that perception is reality,
Oh, that's hilarious.
and so, like, you can never control how others perceive you,
Okay.
and because everyone's perception is varied, they're gonna perceive you differently across time and memory. It's just, like, so easy.
S- So with that in mind, then, if you knew that you had to live a different way around different people, is there a part of you that truly never believed?
No.
Because I feel like a true believer would be like, well, I model Christ in all ways of life
What I
at all
think
times.
what I think comprises my own sense of personal enlightenment, right,
Uh huh.
is that I personally did believe that God was true for many years and rationed his existence logically, while also reserving scientific fact and realizing that there are so many unanswered questions. And I can truly say that intrinsically, by nature, I feel I've always been agnostic about everything.
Yeah.
Like, truly. Why wouldn't I be?
No, that makes sense. Yeah.
Right? It's a state of openness.
I think that's a good mindset to have. I really do. I think, as we go through this podcast, we've talked about, we are not going to align with everyone with every thought we have. It's okay.
Yes. That's okay. We respect that. That's why I said in the beginning, we're here as people, individually, privately.
Yeah, we're here as flawed humans
Yes.
that have our beliefs based on the knowledge that we've taken in and our
It's as simple
environment.
as we just have a shared experience in some capacity.
And you have to give everyone grace and understanding that
Yeah.
um it's like
Human dignity, respect.
it's like it's like a comedian up on stage where you laugh at 99% of his jokes and then you don't laugh at one because it means something to you,
Right.
right? And then so it's like, don't let the one joke that means something to you ruin the whole show.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And a lot of people get caught up in that. Maybe they had a close friend in a wheelchair that, like, and then they make a wheelchair joke, and it's like, well, I hate that comedian. That fucker made a joke about my friend in the comedian, or my friend in the wheelchair. It's like, you're forgetting the whole thing. That's just a moment in time where you didn't align on that one topic.
Yeah.
So
Loss of ego, humility, respect, ethics, morals. I mean, these are like just human traits that we've defined over time socially that are well established in logic. And like that to me is what I search now and why I'm comfortable in my own skin these days.
so I want to kind of move on to the transition. So you grew up in this system. You ended up moving out of state, and what was that transition like, going from a very structured
Yeah.
community, having ones around, even though you may necessarily not side with them on every topic and agree with them on every topic, you still had a community you grew up with. You could always ask someone to help you move. There's always, barbecues happening, things going on. What happened when you had to make that choice and you kind of lost those relationships and your sense of community?
That's a really well thought out question, dude. Well appreciated. Um, what a loaded question, really.
No problem. I try.
Could you rephrase it more simply?
Like, just, what was that like for you, having everything, and then losing
Oh, right. Like an assist.
those relationships and community, whether it be family, friends, colleagues that you could turn to? What was that like? How long did it
Yeah.
take? What was the rebuild?
Let me start. So, like, I just think that basically at a simple level, because I sensed that my environment was like not a good one and not in homeostasis for most of my life, I just started to like plan internally, logically about what an exit looked like and how to free myself just gently, ethically,
Hmm.
safely, while respecting the conscience of those around me,
Yeah,
which is hard to do.
sure.
So for me, I felt that it was pretty easy to see that just like changing your locale and location, which is like well known psychiatric advice for like changing your environment,
Yep,
right? You like to just simply change your environment is to welcome new things and be open to new things. So I did that
definitely.
purposely because I knew that I would lose everything already, right? I had a U-Haul and one trailer.
There's some things in the ex-JW community, and I think it's across some other communities as well, but there's thoughts
Right.
of PMO, POMO,
Which I went through.
fading.
Absolutely, you and I like, and so I had found those things probably before you.
Yeah.
I reviewed them in detail and I was prepared with ammo when we spoke.
Yeah, so you PMO is, physically into the organization but mentally out.
Mentally out.
POMO is, physically out, mentally out, like you're basically done. Fading is like you don't want to lose everything, so you just kind of move away. And
Yeah.
close friends and family don't really know if you're going to the meetings or not, don't really know if you're a part of it. And so, kind of, where were you at with all that?
I guess ideologically, I felt that just like the simplest way to do it was just a removal of self, which is funny because that describes ego loss. And it is what happened. You build realities
Yeah.
around that ego for it forever and then lose everything. And so I was like, okay, how do I control that loss? How do I manage my risk? These are like fucking really simple thoughts that humans have had for all of humanity. And that led to like innovation. And so I basically like in my head started just building out, like mapping my future. What does it look like? How do I feel as a resolved person? How do I find the purpose that I can attain? And so just like of my own free will, just out of logic, eventually through great pain and effort and friends like you, like freed myself of alcoholism successfully to a degree that I find conscionable. And that was a huge step that helped me like improve my cognitive capacity as a person and a human.
Was alcohol, like, what was alcohol for you?
So many things like the witnesses, like it was freedom from the many thought processes that they introduced me to against my will that I was forced to cope with.
And it's the one thing that witnesses, like, kind of don't have an issue with.
Oddly, and I find marijuana to be way better for my health personally. Like I had a licensed medical card in Arizona and tried it, and it was the best thing I've ever done for my health, which was in 2015. when I left.
Yeah.
So
There's so many witnesses at all levels of the organization that
sloppy drunks, the half of them.
sloppy drunk, overdrink all the time.
Okay, I said playfully. I said playfully.
Playfully? Okay. So that was obviously tough for you. You had to move, you had to lose everything. Did you officially end up getting disfellowshipped? I don't think you did, right?
No, no, and I think that's fair. I think that I've left with intention and peace and peace.
Yeah.
Like when you think of Sun Tzu, The Art of War, in its entirety, it literally just says it's messy and harmful to fight and cause pain.
Yeah.
And so I observed that. I wanted to do so with as little risk as possible.
So you kind of did choose to fade away then.
Yeah, I faded.
Yeah. Yeah.
I did.
A little bit of framework for people that are listening. When a Jehovah's Witness goes into a congregation, they have something called their cards in the congregation, and it basically has all of their information. What we also come to find out, it has all your dirty little secrets and little letters that the elders write about you. Maybe you were 15 and you got drunk when you
Yeah.
shouldn't have.
Yep.
It's in there.
Every social calibration method that they can use to track your performance via metric over time.
Yeah, so these cards would travel with you from congregation to congregation. So
Yeah, like a plague, like an infectious disease.
you were just always instructed to, when you move, you go to a new congregation and you request your cards to be sent over to the new congregation.
You turn in them motherfucking cards, boy.
And you just don't really know what that means, but you just have an assumption like, oh, just my information, so I'm registered and they know who I'm.
You're not even aware of the social credit system you're partaking in.
You have no idea. So basically, the moment those cards get sent in, they now know the caliber of person that you are, and they immediately can kind of create an idea of who you are and what you can and can't do, and what your ministry hour history was when you were younger, and how quote unquote spiritual you were. And that stuff always carries with you. So you don't easily have the ability to fade away because they're always looking for those cards.
Yeah.
Hey, you got to move. Let's transfer those cards. Your old congregation.
And they're good at data management and organization
Yeah, your old congregation's reaching out to you. Please get those cards transferred to your new congregation.
by system design.
And if you kind of avoid the elder from the old hall, he'll kind of keep calling you. Hey, I didn't get the new elder's name or information. What congregation are you going to? So they really do try to keep up on you if you try to kind of slip away like Trent did.
And I want to say I've intentionally built my own framework to just basically accomplish that in an ethical way for me. And I think that's all you have to do. Like it is a system that you choose involuntarily by force. And like it's okay to peacefully exit those. I think that's a humanitarian message that's everyone will feel is fair.
What do you feel like helped you rebuild your sense of self and kind of start to establish what your identity was without the role of the organization in your life?
Like if you think in really simple terms, the way that we arrange words and basically provides structure for thought, like really simply.
Hmm.
And so for me, it was just defining what I wanted to be as a person now with freedom to do so and a clean slate. There's extreme power in that.
It's so wild that people don't truly understand sometimes what freedom.
What that means and the freedom it affords.
Yeah, it's a lot of people kind of throw out freedoms when it comes to politics or America or different things, but it's like until you truly have no idea that you have open freedom to think out loud.
Yeah.
And
Or internally, but, judgmentally.
well, I mean, we were allowed to think internally, but we weren't allowed to really go down that well.
Yeah. Deeply.
And now we have the open opportunity to go down any well we'd like, and hopefully surround ourselves by people that allow us to do that and take us in with that mindset, which I think is awesome. But
Yeah.
so you that's kind of an ongoing process, constantly rebuilding your sense of self.
Yeah.
But you've had your time of kind of healing and growth. Where do you think you're at with that?
I don't know. Like, so basically, I reached a point where, like, I'm satisfied with a lot of the internal work I've done. And, like, essentially, like,
Hmm.
what I want to do is just help humans have really human conversations together, like, really simply about the pain that we share
Yeah.
and how we all deal with it collectively,
Yeah.
like, what that comprises. Because emotional intelligence and the rational intelligence that it takes, to do this process should be just like recorded, probably scribatorily for like everyone to hear, at least in a couple ways for humanity in some way.
Yeah, I think it's important for sure.
I think it is.
Yeah, it's
Like, just to, like,
yeah.
help in some way, and people, and then freedom to choose and privacy, right? Like, people can choose the capacity in which they wanna do things for themselves, and then they stand on record for that.
Are you looking back? Are you, if you did it all over again, are you thankful that you still kind of lived the life course you had, or do you wish that you never grew up as a Jehovah's Witness?
No, I would not change a single thing, unfortunately, because part of ego death is knowing that, at different points in time, you're different people.
What is what are some of the weird words where you hear kind of a random aside, but like
Theocratic ministry school arrangement,
so
uh,
yeah, okay, so theocratic ministry school constantly comes in your head.
counseling, preaching.
Are there weird words that come to your mind where you're like, I can't never hear this word again and not think of Joe's Way? The first one that comes to mind for me is the friends.
Ooh, say it again.
We got to get together with the friends.
Oh, the friends. Okay, yeah, brothers and sisters.
Yep, brothers and sisters.
Jehovah
Obviously, yeah.
is the simplest one, and so I'll tell you something fucking stupid about my brain. Okay, it's like,
Okay, okay.
how many times the word Yahweh has crossed my mind and paper intentionally in my life, but not by my choice,
Uh, yeah.
and how that sounds kind of like when you say yes way, or like yeah way
Stupid.
in Spanish.
Yahweh, bro.
Like, I make these stupid assumptions, like these stupid, like, implications, right? Or like thought patterns. And then it gets stuck in my head. And so now anytime I hear someone say yes way or no way, I think of God. It fucking sucks.
That's hilarious. That does suck. I mean, there's so many examples of different songs or words that
Some of us are patterned for that kind of association, dude, and it sucks. Anyone who's a gamer knows what I'm talking about. Like, dude, put a matching game in front of me. Oh my God, forever. And it's like that's what they did to us psychologically.
there's sometimes still to this day, and I haven't been out in the grand scheme of things that long, just a few years, but
Comparatively, we're toddlers, yeah.
yeah. And I do look forward to having a chat and a conversation with someone who's been out longer, just to kind of get their take on things and different histories and different, time frames. But yeah, there's just different songs that still pop into my mind that it's just like, is this ever gonna leave? Just like
I think that you and I could majestically sing some theocratic ministry school songs together in a way that would move people emotionally, but we probably will choose not to ever do that again.
well, maybe we will. Maybe it'll be a bonus for the podcast.
Maybe I'll remix that shit.
Well, so if someone listening to this podcast, maybe they just have a curiosity, and they may be part of a religion, quote unquote, a religion. What kind of advice or maybe kind of words would you say to them, just to kind of test, as the witnesses in the Bible likes to say, to test your faith, just to make sure that you're not a part of a high control group or a cult? What would advice or kind of things would you say to them?
Keeping it grounded. I think that the bite model and understanding it is probably pretty core to understanding like intentionally misformed frameworks. And like I'm trying to limit like what I ask of people, and rationality is to the point minimal of minimalization. Like, I want to ask as little as possible. And I think that asking people to just hold themselves to a standard of logic and reasoning that they're probably already patterned to do from being a witness, but like it's been misapplied. But like, if you actually start thinking and connecting dots of like, how we think, and use it intentionally to just think better with more purpose for humans now, that's probably all it will take in my mind. Like, you can do anything if you are just thinking that way, because the thing is, there's so many outside forces that are guiding things now. Just in general, it's always been true, but like, it's true. The way to insulate ourselves is from that
Yeah.
is to just have our own grounded self checks of logic and framework that is stronger than external force could be, that's unreasonable.
I think the thing for me, and we'll get to it when we have, my discussion about me, when you interview me. But I think the thing for me is really key is just to ask the why behind everything.
Yeah. And also appreciate and understand the and reasons for it.
Yeah, it's like the why this happens, and just
See, you're saying the and.
just keep doing, try to get to, like, a lot of people talk to me about, and I've told you this recently too, is like I have a fascination with the origins of things.
Yeah.
So it's like ask the why behind it. And it's funny because young children are taught this, or born with this rather, where they just keep asking questions.
Yeah.
Well, why?
What? My daughter does it all the time.
Well, what? Well, and then you give an answer, and then well, why?
Yeah.
And then you give another answer. Well, why? And it starts to get kind of annoying, but like it's built into us, and I think there's a part of it that's taken out of us.
So like
So
without making any interpretations, right? We could assume that like logic is within us and we're always striving to like reconcile that. It's just like intrinsic. That's the why.
yeah,
It's so easy, and that's what humans should just do simply.
yeah. So Trinity Herrera, we got to hear a little bit of your story. We'll continue to be hearing your story as we go through this podcast. But with that, you, my friend, are kind of the official first podcast subject. Really appreciate your time and following me along with me on this journey of ours.
Well, I appreciate the same in you very much. And I want to say too that like I think we designed this intentionally so that even though we're going to end it, we're trying to show and model forms of equality of intellectual humanism, and ethical humanism for people to benefit.
But yeah, with that, we're going to say goodbye for now. And I look forward to chatting with you again very soon.
All right, love you, man.
Love you.
Thank you for joining us on this journey in this era. If you found today's episode valuable, please share it with someone who might need it. Check the podcast description for our socials and other information.
Please consider supporting us at Patreon at patreon.com/culturepod. If you'd like to tell your story, please contact us at cult.ture.pod@gmail.com. Until next time, stay curious, stay critical, and stay free.